Welcome to the Jerry Ratcliffe Show. I'm Chris Graham, co-host, and Jerry, we haven't talked since last weekend's basketball, the loss to Ohio, ending UVA's run in the NCAA tournament. Premature for a lot of us as far as that goes. But Jerry, we got a special guest to join us today to help us break down the season and the NCAA tournament and more. So Jerry, welcome. First off, it's great to talk to you again.
Yeah, we've been emailing back and forth, but it's good to see your face and talk a little bit more about basketball. It's always a fun thing to talk about. And I'd like to introduce our special guest now, who's a pretty modest guy, so he probably doesn't like that kind of introduction, but he's truly a legend in Virginia and the state of Virginia basketball world. And it's my pleasure to welcome Barry Parkhill, a Virginia basketball star from the mid-'70s, and still, I bet he can still shoot it. Welcome in, Barry.
Chris and Jerry, it's good to be with you guys. I don't know if I could still shoot it or not, but I don't think I'll try anytime soon.
I know you got all your athletic energies in a different sport right now, so, as do I. So that's perfectly okay.
Golf is a lot easier than basketball. Actually, basketball is a whole lot easier than golf, I should say.
Jerry, we're having some issues with you freezing up. Let's see. So Barry, I'll throw the first question out. How this season, with all the challenges, I mean, obviously last season was cut short with COVID-19 and we didn't get to have an NCAA tournament. And then this season, the guys show up on grounds, I guess, in July and August. And it's just been such a tough battle for them, the coaching staff, managers, everyone around the program. Can you put into perspective just how, with your experience in basketball, how tough did this have to be for these guys this year?
I don't know that anybody could really answer that because it's never happened before. But the one thing that's always out there, every program went through basically the same thing. Less preparation time, less practice time, whether it's a veteran or a new kid coming into the program. I'm guessing that every day kids and coaches wake up hoping that all the tests are negative and they can keep moving forward. I don't know of any program that didn't have some issues along the way. At the end of the day, my hat's off to Tony, his staff, Carla, university, who did all the things necessary to put in the proper protocols. But again, nobody's ever experienced this before.
And, you know, I went through this season. We're trying to get Jerry reconnected here too. But I went through this season thinking, even from the very beginning, how tough this would be for any coaching staff, any player group, any team. But particularly with what Tony and his staff asked the players to do, some coaches can just roll the ball out there, so to speak, and the guys can do what they do. The offense, the mover blocker offense, the pack line defense requires so many reps, so much work, and so many game reps. And we didn't get as many games in this year. Certainly practices were different. So I would think that programs like Virginia's probably maybe struggled even more because of the circumstances this year. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, that could be the case. I think probably a lot of coaches out there would disagree because they're putting in stuff through the summer, in the fall. You're allowed practice time in the summer, coaches on the floor, and everybody missed out on a lot of that. But you know what, Chris, and maybe I'm a little bit prejudiced, but with all the things that every coach had to deal with kids, every kid handles it differently, emotionally, mentally. No program could have a better person looking over them than Coach Bennett, the way he handles everything on the basketball floor, off the basketball floor. I think our guys are really fortunate to have him, as their leader. But I just can't imagine what they went through day to day.
And then with the COVID pause at the end, I mean, there were a couple through the season, the games lost, the opportunities lost to play Michigan State, Villanova early on, then adding Gonzaga back in. So kind of making up a little bit for that. The Virginia Tech game, the first Virginia Tech game was missed. That last COVID pause, again, there was no opportune time to have these kind of things pop up, but right before the tournament. And again, I know I know we're talking about something so unprecedented, but from your perspective, how tough had to be to go in to the biggest game of the season with basically Zoom and dribbling the ball around the neighborhood kind of preparation. That had to be really tough.
It was tough, but you know what, Chris? I think at the end of the day, everybody, myself included, I'm sure the players, the coaches, grateful to play. Maybe one practice. Listen, a whole week of practice, you prepare for the opponent. You look down the road a little bit to possibly your next opponent, but working out every day, getting reps, guys getting in shape to come off the bench and be productive. We had one practice, but at the end of the day, you can't use that as an excuse. We competed. We didn't make shots in the last 14 minutes or so of the game, and Ohio U did. And it's in the books, but we'll never know if our guys had a full week of practice, how much difference that would have made. But again, I think just grateful to be playing games is what you got to put out front. And a lot of people, including myself, really disappointed. But you know what, Chris? Winning the ACC regular season championship makes for a great year.
That's right. And as Tony even noted after that win over Louisville, we may have to put a mask on that trophy this year, but there is a trophy for this team and all the ups and downs. Yes. And in fact, I've got Jerry. We're having issues with his Zoom, so I've got him on the phone. And so Jerry, Barry and I have been talking about the challenges of the season. Jerry, can you weigh in with a question for Barry?
My initial question was just, you may have already addressed this with Chris, but before my power zapped, what do you think it was like for these players to endure just being here from mid-July, trying to go about business, not only on the basketball court, but as students and just life in general, without any break and having to, pretty much stay to themselves? It had to be just incredibly difficult mentally and emotionally to have to endure that.
I mentioned to Chris, Jerry, the best way you could get an answer to that question is to sit our players down and ask them. We all can only imagine what it was like, and not just, yes, they went through practices and whatnot, but pretty much being isolated, online learning, spending just most of their time in their rooms, getting meals delivered to them. Every kid will handle that differently, in both mentally and emotionally. But as I mentioned to Chris earlier, our guys could not have a better staff led by Tony. Our training staff, Ethan Saliba, best in the business, great coaching staff, from Carla, from President Ryan. I think we probably handled as best you can, but I thought about it a lot, Jerry, but you can't answer that unless you've been through it yourself.
Yeah, I can't imagine how difficult that was, being away from their families and friends and girlfriends, etc. I guess, let's move into the season. They won the regular season championship, and it's something Tony mentioned the other day when someone asked him what he'll remember most from this season on the positive side. And he said the fact that these guys won an ACC regular season championship, that's not something easy to do. And they've done it 5 times under his watch. This season, it was even tougher, I guess, with having games called off on a moment's notice. And as he mentioned, we'll get a banner for that to hang up in John Paul Jones Arena, and they'll get rings for that. That's something very proud to look back on.
Jerry, I think that's a huge understatement. With all the adversity, not just Virginia, but all the teams that went through games being canceled. We took that pause in December for 10 days. Then we turned around. We had a game before, but then we played Gonzaga. And I think in some respects, I say this in a more of a positive light than negative, but I think Coach Bennett and staff, in a way, they've spoiled a lot of fans. The expectations and the bar has been set way up. But at the end of the day, that Louisville game on the road was enormous because everybody knew what was on the line, and something was on the line for Louisville too. It's not like they had nothing to play for.
Oh yeah.
When we won the regular season ACC championship, that is enormous. That's what I take away from this season. There were some ups and downs. We went through that stretch where we lost 3 games, but we played Florida State. I think they would have beaten anybody that night. Duke only gets better. They've got young kids, but they've got a year under their belt. They've got an incredibly talented team. And NC State, they were playing well. So it's not like, we're losing to teams that were so much better than. But as always, Tony, righted the ship, made adjustments, and got it done when we needed to.
Absolutely. And I agree with you that win at Louisville was incredible. I know this wasn't Chris Mack's best team, but they had some talent on that team. They were playing at home where it's hard for most people to beat them. Virginia's had their number out there, but at the Yum Center. But the fact that they were playing for a double bye as well on their own home court on senior day, I mean, to beat those guys under those circumstances took a lot of guts, really.
Well, it did. And of course, we've had some pretty good success on that floor over the years. And you look back too, Jerry and Chris, every team had issues with COVID, but also every team goes through injuries. Sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. You look at our roster, what would have happened had Shedrick and Statman been healthy all year? It happens to teams, but you go with what you got, and taking away a championship is pretty special.
And of course, that led us into the ACC tournament, where Jim Boeheim. I know that Tom Izzo gets all the credit for being Mr. March, but Jim Boeheim does a pretty good job once tournament time rolls around. Not so much in the ACC tournament, but the NCAA. But still, his teams are usually ready to play. And what a basketball game that was in the quarterfinals with Virginia, and it took an incredible moment by a freshman, Reese Beekman, to pull that out and to counter Buddy Boeheim's incredible performance. That kid just keeps getting better and better. I know as a great shooter, you probably admire what he's accomplished this year. But what a heck of a game that was in the ACC tournament.
Well, and everybody, when we went to play Syracuse, people think back to the first time we played them. You can't look at that game because that was almost 2 months previous. And they obviously got better and better. And you play Syracuse, you're going to face a defense you don't face all year. But Tony's played really well and prepared for that over the years. And we've played pretty well against Syracuse. But they were playing really well. Boeheim was hot as a firecracker. He still is. But you know what? We found a way to get it done. And that's what's most important. And we'll never know what would have happened had we kept playing. I like our chances, but it's in the books.
Yeah, of course, Georgia Tech went on to win the ACC tournament championship, as everyone knows. I have a feeling Virginia would have beaten them for a third time and played Florida State for the title. And I think the Wahoos would like to have had another crack at the Seminoles in that championship game. I guess we'll never know, but. Then obviously, I'm sure you were as stunned the next morning, Friday morning, when we woke up and found out that Virginia had another COVID case and they had to withdraw from the tournament and made it into the NCAA by the skin of their teeth, just quarantine-wise. How tough is it to prepare for a game of that magnitude, Barry, and not be able to practice? That, for a player, that's got to be tough.
Again, never experienced it. It's different, but again, I think at the end of the day, if you take the positive versus the negative, grateful to play in the game, to have the game versus having that game canceled. It sure probably impacted the kids with one practice, not only your legs but also preparing. You go over, you can go over a Zoom scouting report all you want, but when you're on the floor you're moving guys around, you've got a scout team running the other team's offense and defense, you're going to be more prepared. But again, Ohio U did what they had to do down the stretch, and we missed some open looks that they go in, it's a different game, but they didn't. But again, grateful to play.
Yeah, you're right. You got to give Ohio U a lot of credit. I think they had a good game plan, and still, I agree with you. I think if Virginia, under normal circumstances, would have been able to win that game and move on to face Creighton, I don't know what would have happened in that game. But again, it would have been a nice affair for Virginia to have another shot at Gonzaga. Don't know if they would have been able to beat him. Gonzaga's a pretty darn good basketball team, but would have been fun to see what would have happened.
Well, I think we all realize at the end of the day, you play the game you've got, and if you win, you move on. I think in the back of everybody's mind, including mine, say, well, this would be great to have another chance to play Gonzaga. But good teams, all the teams in the tournament are good. This year is proven more than ever that you can't look past your next opponent. But again, the circumstances were challenging. But again, I keep saying it. It was when I got the news the Friday before that our ACC semifinal game was canceled, I think it jolted everybody. And then you're holding your breath. Are we going to play? And finally, it kept being positive, and then we were going to play, which I think was the best outcome versus what could have been.
Yeah, it was unbelievable that they even got to play because, they couldn't have pushed it any more than what they did and still been able to make the field due to the quarantine. So extremely fortunate in that respect. And it was a good season. It maybe didn't live up to their expectations, but still accomplished a lot. But any particular players impress you or surprise you the way they played this season, Barry?
Not really. In normal circumstances, I would have had a chance to, watch some preseason practices when I wasn't traveling, and I didn't this year. I did see Sam Hauser practice last year. Not hard to figure out. He's just a great player, smart kid, can shoot it, really knows the game. Not that Beekman wasn't surprised, but he really played well, especially for a first-year kid. I think he's got a great future. It's nice to see Sam Hauser play the way he played. It's nice to see Jay Huff really have kind of a breakout year, more consistent game in and game out. Certainly wish all those kids well. I'd love to see Hauser, Huff, and Wallentense come back, but I don't know what's going to happen there. I doubt that they will. But again, I think you look at from start to finish, just one heck of a year based on all the kids had to deal with. And all that Tony had to deal with in shuffling the lineup with injuries and a couple of kids taking a pause here and there. Whole team taking 10 days off in December. I can't imagine. That's like starting the season all over again. Although you don't have 6 weeks of practice, you got a game. So I think it was handled about as well as it could have been handled.
Yeah, you mentioned Reese Beekman, the freshman guard from down in Louisiana, although his mom will quickly remind us that he grew up in Wisconsin, I guess around Milwaukee. I really liked his game, and yeah, I think he's probably more of a scorer than what we saw this year. I guess as a freshman, it's always a little difficult to push your envelope with so many experienced teammates, and I guess you're a little reluctant sometimes to take things into your hands. But what do you see in his game, Barry, that you like?
Just about everything that he does, Jerry. Defensively, I think he's already good. I think he's going to be terrific. He's quick feet. He shows he can guard. He can probably guard at least two positions, point guard and two guard. I think that at the age, this is my opinion, at his age, it's tough to really improve a lot as a shooter, but I think he will improve. probably to get more confidence, and maybe even that shot against Syracuse, that's got to give that kid some confidence moving forward, where if you're in a situation like that, you've made a shot. That's not going to say you're going to make every one, but you've been there, so you're more confident in taking the shot at the end of a game. But again, being a point guard, you want to be a good foul shooter. I think he's a pretty decent foul shooter. Hopefully he'll get better, but he takes it to the hole pretty well. He's very athletic. I just think he's a really good all-around player. And he's, you look at him as I would, in my opinion, be the point guard of the future.
I'll tell you who surprised me, Barry, was Trey Murphy. I interviewed him when he first transferred from Rice to Virginia once he had committed. And, he was kind of self-critical of himself, saying he didn't think that he had that great a year at Rice, although his dad and his stats said otherwise. But he felt like a year at Virginia sitting out, which we initially thought he would probably do, to get stronger under Mike's tutelage, and just to develop his game and make it a little more solid. He thought that was what he would have to do, but I was surprised he came on and played like gangbusters, and what a valuable player he was throughout the season.
All the things you touched on, Jerry, he will get stronger. He's got a huge upside. Defensively, he's good. I think he can be better because he's long. He's a pretty athletic kid. Would like to see him with the strength, maybe take the ball to the basket a little bit more. And I'm sure Tony's talked with him about that all year long. And you saw him do that a little bit towards the end of the year. The Miami game sticks out. Just got more aggressive. And the more aggressive you are as a scorer, he's going to go to the foul line. He's a great foul shooter. He's a great three-point shooter. That's going to open up almost a mid-range game within the offense. You got to do everything within the context of our offense. But I just think he's only going to get better.
Chris, you got any questions?
Oh, it's so crazy, Barry, to now think about. I know we're going to ask about next year and early thoughts on next year, and it's hard to get a handle on that because of the transfer market, the portal. We're all looking at the portal several times a day. Probably, I know I am at least. First off, maybe were you surprised when we heard that Casey Morsell had entered into the portal, and would you be surprised if any other names might end up there from this year's roster?
The way it's been with transfers and the transfer portal, I would say nothing surprises me, Chris, anymore. I'm an old dog. The transfer rule, I don't like it. The transfer portal and a graduate transfer is a little bit different than a kid just leaving to go somewhere else. I don't know. I think sometimes, and it's worked out for kids where they say, well, I'm not getting the playing time here. I want to go somewhere where I can play. You got to be real careful where you choose to go. And a lot depends on who wants you. But I think not just Tony, but probably every college coach out there is just looking at like, we're going to have to do some major reshuffling, some recruiting to fill roster spots. I don't know how they do it because it's so much different now than it's been, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think sometimes kids aren't willing to earn it. They got to work to get better, and you got to earn your playing time. Some kids are willing to, stay with it and earn it. And I've seen kids leave different programs, not just Virginia. They've made great decisions. It's worked out well for them. Sometimes it doesn't work out. That's the way it is today. You have to deal with it. You got to adjust to it. And hopefully you find the right kids. And Tony and his staff over the years obviously have found some really good pieces. You look about Trey Murphy, Anthony Gill, there's been some Sam Hauser. I mean, there's some really good kids have come in that have really helped the program.
Jerry?
Yeah, I admire the patience that JF had very early in his career. He sat for his redshirt freshman year and hardly ever got in any playing time. a little bit more as a sophomore with some more responsibility. But, you know, a lot of kids under his circumstance, 7 foot, with a good offensive game, but needed to get stronger and play defense. A lot of those guys would have bolted. I admire what he did, sticking around and just working to get better.
Absolutely, Jerry. And you know, if the kids are going to work at it, you know, here they're going to work hard. They're going to learn to play defense. Huff obviously has offensive ability, but you look at so many kids. You know, Tony's obviously a great coach. He's also a great teacher, as are his coaches. Our kids get better as they go through the program, and there's no better way to start judging that is look at the NBA rosters and how many of Tony's kids are playing in the NBA. So our kids do get better.
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, no question.
Tony's costing me money. I've had the league pass, NBA league pass, the last couple of years because there's so many guys to keep up with, and that's a good thing actually. But you know, on the Zoom, the folks listening can't see this. There's a Malcolm Brogdon jersey hanging behind me. I've got Joe Harris. We've got Kyle Guy. We've got gosh, I'm going to leave names out now. DeAndre Hunter doing well as he recovers from his injury in Atlanta. What does it say, Barry? I mean, these guys are all guys who came to UVA. In some cases, you know, they were 4-star recruits, but, you know, they weren't necessarily considered NBA potential players down the road. Yeah, they developed at UVA, and now we've got some star players from Tony's tutelage and the staff's tutelage. It says a lot about what Tony's been able to do in the last several years.
No question. You mentioned the word development. That's a big part of it. As I said, Tony's and his staff, they're great teachers, not just coaching, where our kids get better. And I don't want to leave out Ty Jerome. You got Mamadi Diakite. Braxton Key apparently is playing really well in the G League. You got Mike Scott still playing. And Mike's last year was Tony's first year. And I think that was a huge asset for Mike playing under Tony for that year. And again, not to forget, not that he's playing, but Rick Carlisle, he's not one of Tony's guys, but you can't forget Rick is one of the better coaches in the NBA. But it just shows you know, a lot of those kids coming in were talented coming into Virginia, but they got so much better. And it's, you know, a lot of kids today, when they're coming out of high school, every kid thinks he can play in the NBA. I don't care who he is, what school he goes to. They are going to ask, well, how many guys you have playing in the league? And now, you know, Tony and his staff can say, look, we got all these guys. A lot of these guys are playing really well. And again, the sky's the limit for all of them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's funny that other rival coaches used to use that against Virginia and Tony in recruiting, saying, "Oh, well, you know, you go to Virginia, you'll never play in the NBA." And man, did he blow that up! It's amazing. I guess I agree with you, Barry. It's a new. I guess it's like the old Wild West with the way the transfer portal is now. I saw the other day that there's more kids in the transfer portal at this moment than there are players in the entire NBA. So if you're a coach, and I know you used to coach, can you imagine pouring all your time into recruiting as regular, and then at the end of your season, you got to go into what I guess Tony compared it to speed dating with the new round of transfers that you're in the market for. That's got to be just very tedious work for a coach.
I can't imagine it. I've never experienced it. I never will. But you know what? When you're coaching in today's game, you've got to adjust. You've got to adapt. You pour so much time, energy, resources in recruiting kids, and you're still going to do that. But now kids leave. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I know with Coach and his staff, you know, they're looking for a certain kind of kid, and it's not just talent, academic talent, but character. And all those things are really, really important. And I think if you look back, and I haven't studied this, but if you look at, in particular, a couple guys we've gotten to transfer in, Tony and staff have recruited these kids in high school. So they know the kids and their families. So I think in some respects, that kind of helps if a kid's looking to leave and he's interested in Virginia. But again, you got to roll with the punches today, guys. And I cannot imagine what it's like.
Yeah, you got to get him admitted to the University of Virginia as well, which isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. So that further complicates it. Go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry, I was jumping in there with. I was touting our alma mater here. Barry and I are proud of that part of how tough it is to get into UVA. So anyway,
I hear you. So it makes it a special place.
Exactly.
You know, you mentioned it, Barry, and a lot of people do when it comes to bringing in transfers or just recruiting in general. But Virginia is known as a developmental program, and most of us aren't fortunate enough to get to watch practice. I know this year you didn't get to see it much because of the COVID thing, but you've been able to go drive by practices a lot over the Tony's era. How what's the right word? How difficult, how challenging are those practices? Everybody sees Tony as a nice all shucks, all American kind of guy, but he can get on those players when he needs to in practice. How challenging is it to practice, and what have you seen from him and his staff about the way they go about developing players that makes this staff special?
It's a process, which is a buzzword in today's sports world. When they first come in, and I don't see every practice, but obviously teaching the pack line defense is really, really important, and they work on it early on in the summer when kids come back. Our kids are always in great shape. I mean, they're playing year round. Mike Curtis is the best in the business. It's not like you got to run these kids ragged or punish them when they're not doing something right. As I said before, great Tony and his staff, great teachers. I've seen drills. You see new drills, shooting drills, ball handling drills, skills. Tony means business. Tony has a way about him like nobody I've ever seen. And listen, I've gotten to know Tony fairly well. He's a pretty competitive guy, and that's an understatement. But he's not one that's going to holler and scream. But you know he's the coach, and you know he means business, and he's going to make his point if it needs to be made in a specific situation that's not going well. But he's just got a way about him. And he's a great teacher. He's a great coach. He's a better person.
Yeah, I haven't been able to be that close, but from what I've observed, I would say you're spot on. I know, just to lighten things up a little bit, like get away from basketball for a moment. I know you love golf, as do I. I'm not as good a player as you are, but I still love the game. But just talk about your love for the game. Is that for me, Barry? That's kind of a release.
Well, I do love golf. Some days more than others. Sometimes golf doesn't love me, but if you spell it backwards, that's probably the appropriate term. But I played a little bit in high school and didn't play for quite a while, and it's very challenging. I love the game, and with my job and my travels, I've been fortunate to play some of the best courses in the country, and I've played some courses out of the country. It's a great way to spend time with people. There's just something about the game that always brings you back. And I'm not a great one to practice. That takes time, but I do love to play.
What's your favorite course that you've played?
Almost an impossible question to answer, but I would put Augusta very much towards the top, if not the top. There's a place in Baltimore called Caves Valley, which is an incredible golf experience. I don't remember it that well, but I have played Cypress Point once. And San Francisco Golf Club is in my top 5. But there's so many other courses. Pittsburgh's got great courses. Allegheny Golf Club, which most people haven't heard of, is one of my favorite courses. Marion is tough. Pine Valley's tough. But it's fun to play those courses. They usually eat me up, but I just really enjoy the game.
I know what you mean. I've been able to play a bunch of U.S. Open courses at U.S. Open media days about a month before the real tournament, and they're usually they're set up in their most difficult conditions, which is not conducive for my game. But yeah, I know what you mean. I've been able to play some pretty cool courses, and they usually eat me up as well. You have a bucket list, Barry, of courses. I have one. I have three Well, I have a lot of courses on my bucket list, but the three at the top, you've already mentioned one of them is Augusta. And I'd like to play Pebble Beach just because of the history there. And I'd like to play St. Andrews for the same reason. Those are the three at the top of my bucket list. What's on your bucket list?
I've never really established one. I've played St. Andrews. I've never played Pebble Beach. I think I'd rather make a house payment than play Pebble Beach. But I can't think of too many that, and I'm sure there are that I haven't played. I've played in Scotland, Ireland, England, Wales. I just can't think of a course right now, Jerry, that I'd like to get on that I haven't. I'd love to play Cypress Point one more time. But there's great courses in LA. I've never been to Bandon Dunes. I've heard a lot of people rave about there. I've played courses you've never heard of that are great. Wally Walker out in Seattle belongs to Seattle Golf Club. Tremendous golf course. I like Glenmore. I like my home course. So there's too many to name.
That's great. Well, I do have one on you. I have played Bandon Dunes, so at least I've got one up on you there. But you probably got
there. You go.
One up on me everywhere else.
I'm not going to keep score. I'm happy for you.
I know what you mean. Looking ahead, Barry, this basketball team next year, of course, there's a lot of questions unanswered. We don't know who might be transferring in. Don't know if anybody else is transferring out. What do you think Tony is on his wish list to make this team complete for next year?
There's just too many unanswered questions, Jerry, about his roster. He's filling out his roster. I mean, Shedrick's got, I think, a big upside. Okay. How's, having a full summer, spring, summer, where he can really work on his game with our coach's help. Cody Statman, basically didn't play all year, and he got good minutes. I think he can certainly help us. Kihei's back, Beekman's back, Murphy. But you got to fill in the blanks. We're losing, two starters with big numbers, and Montenay had his moments for some games for us. It's a perfect example. How much better did he get? Not in the ball on defense. He just got so much better playing defense, and that's always going to be important. But we just don't know right now. He's got one kid signed, a kid from New Zealand, who sounds like a pretty good player. But it's too early to really tell what the roster is going to look like. And I don't know how long it's going to take. It may take till May or June to figure out, who's going to fill all the spots.
You're right. Chris, you got anything else?
Oh gosh, we could talk to Barry for hours, but I'm sure he probably needs to get out and, I don't know, maybe play some more golf. You're in Florida, right, Barry, right now?
We are in Florida. Yes.
Oh wow, it's no, I think Jerry, I'll let you wrap it up.
I just want to thank Barry for taking some time out of his break away from the madness of the work world to join us and give us shares thoughts with us about basketball. We really respect your opinions, Barry. You've been around Virginia basketball for a long time, and you know it as intricately as anyone. And we appreciate you giving us some insight and taking some time out of your day. Thank you so much.
You guys are great to have me on, and my opinion's worth a nickel, Jerry. You know that. But I appreciate you, Chris. It's good to be with you, and thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it, guys.
I'd like to introduce to our audience Brian Plum, CEO of Blue Ridge Bank, one of our sponsors for the Jerry Ratcliffe podcasts, and we really appreciate them investing and believing in our podcast and in my website, jerryratcliffe.com. Brian, welcome, and tell us a little bit about Blue Ridge Bank and what makes it so special.
Yeah, absolutely, Jerry. So Blue Ridge Bank's been around since 1893, making it one of Virginia's oldest community banks. And following a recent merger with Bay Banks of Virginia, Virginia Commonwealth Bank, now also one of the largest community banks in Virginia. And we're able to bring our innovative approach and that size to bear for our clients. We have a focus that puts our clients and our communities at the top of our priority list, and recognize that everything we do, we're able to do only because of our clients and the communities we serve.
I know you take a lot of pride in personal service.
Absolutely. Again, we recognize that everything we do and are able to do starts with taking care of the people we serve, and that comes with our clients and the communities, and also our commitment to doing everything we can to help folks out. You see that evidenced by our response with Paycheck Protection Program that was implemented as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our bank has helped in the most recent round over 4,000 small businesses obtain the financing and the funds they need to ensure their survival.
And one of the things that makes Blue Ridge Bank really unique is something I don't know if any other bank in America does this, but you guys have a great jackpot for your customers.
Exactly, Jerry. Yeah, we have the Brb Jackpot Account, and that account is a way to reward savers and encourage them to put money back for life's future needs. We all recognize that in the United States, we have a significant personal savings crisis. And so we launched this account back in 2015. We were the first bank in the country to launch this product, and we did it to play a role and a part in helping to solve the country's financial savings crisis. And so if you put money into this account, you get an entry for every $25 that you deposit into the account. And this year, the grand prize is $100,000. So similar to a lottery, you buy the ticket, you get paid. Unlike the lottery, here, if you deposit the money, you increase your savings account. Even if you don't win the $100,000 at the end of the year, you still have additional savings for life's needs.
That's great. And for those interested in perhaps opening up an account or finding out more about Blue Ridge Bank, tell them how to find out more information.
Absolutely, Jerry. You can find our website at www.mybrb, as in My Blue Ridge Bank.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Welcome back to the Jerry Ratcliffe Show with Chris Graham, and we'd like to welcome in a special guest this week, as we always do, from our fine friends over at UVA Orthopedics and UVA Sports Medicine. This week's guest is no stranger to our interviews, been on several times, Dr. Winston Gwathmey. Winston, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Jerry.
Always glad to talk to you, man. I know you're a passionate Wahoo fan. Have been since Tyke, and
yes,
passion is still there.
It still is there. Sometimes it tries, but it's still there.
And, I think it tried everyone recently, and the disappointment with the late COVID test out of the ACC tournament going into the NCAAs. They made it by a hairbreadth, I guess, to make it to Indianapolis. For a while, it looked a little shaky.
It looked very shaky for a while, and it continued to look shaky once they got to Indianapolis. But anyhow, it is what it is. So let's move forward.
As a medical doctor, even though you're in ortho instead of, I know COVID is not your expertise, but how shaky was it? I mean, if they had pushed another few hours, it probably wouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah, my understanding is that they had to get 2 negative tests within like 24 hours of them getting there. So they needed to have a full week of negative tests. And so as somebody who gets tested multiple times per week, that test result, you're sitting there waiting for it to pop up. And, it's almost it's almost like getting a test back in school or something like that. If you get a failing score, the world's kind of over. So it was probably pretty nerve wracking just at baseline, even just getting the test every single day, knowing that one more positive test would end the season.
It's kind of remarkable, I think, Winston, that we've only had one team, VCU, that had to drop out of the field
Agreed.
of 68.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's somewhat amazing. What's your overall, looking back at the season, what's your overall thoughts on what this team accomplished?
I think we accomplished a lot for what it was. I mean, the problem was there's no flow to the season, and this team really needed. There are some new parts they're trying to integrate, and they needed the practice and the actual flow. And I felt like every time we had something going, we had a disruption. And so, I love the team. It was one of the best shooting teams I can remember. It was an inverted team if you think about it, because normally our offense goes through our guards, and our 3-4-5 really drove the offense this year. And so I don't know I think if we had more time as a unit, especially over the summer, we could have made it work a lot better. But man, there was some good talent on that team. I wish it could have glued a little bit better there toward the end.
Yeah, no question. Go ahead.
I think that last week of that we got, going into the tournament, not having the opportunity to play with each other, the shooting clearly took a hit, and just again the offensive flow took a hit. And so I think that one or two more days of practice would have made a huge difference. And I think if we could have gotten to the first game, we would have been a little bit better off, obviously. But it's too bad. It is what it is. But we'll move on.
Yeah. Move on to better things.
Yes, sir.
I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was the high ankle sprain injury, something that you're one of your lines of expertise, and LeBron James, I guess, had one. Can you explain why a high ankle sprain is worse than a low ankle sprain? I think we've all had the low ones. I'm not sure how many people have had the high ones.
Yeah, so I was watching that Lakers game, and LeBron, I don't know if you kind of saw the highlights. So LeBron James clearly is a machine, right? And so the guy came down the outside of his ankle. And normally when you sprain your ankle rolls in, if that makes sense. So you plant on it, you land awkwardly, and your foot rolls in. And when the foot rolls in, you injure the ligaments on the outside of your ankle. When your foot rolls out, like when someone rolls up on you, like it did for LeBron and that injury, what ends up happening is a force that goes into your ankle does not go through the joint itself, but actually goes up the leg between the tibia bone, which is the shin bone, the fibula bone, which is the ankle bone. And it literally splits the two bones apart. And so the ligament goes up the leg, and it ends up being a much longer term injury because the stability between the shin bone and the fibula bone is disrupted. And so our trainer, Ethan Saliba, is an absolute genius when it comes to taping an ankle. But there's no wrap you can possibly make that will secure the tibia to the fibula. And that's why a high ankle sprain takes so long to get back from.
Yeah, we've seen that. It seems like when it's your favorite player or one of the guys on your team that's really necessary to make things click, I know fans are usually saying, man, when's this guy going to come back? But it's not easy to come back from.
Yeah, what ends up happening is when you can protect a low ankle sprain with a brace or with a tape job, and it heals a little faster. You can't really protect the high ankle sprain because we can't reproduce the actual the stability between the shin bone and the fibula bone. We can't wrap that up tight enough to keep those bones together. So every time you load your foot, it basically forces those bones apart, and it hurts a lot. And these athletes, no matter how good they are, they can't overcome that. And so it's a 6-week injury sometimes,
Yeah, I know it's tough. One of our favorite guys from Virginia basketball, DeAndre Hunter, just came back from his meniscus surgery. Talk about what he probably went through to.
Yeah, DeAndre, I'm familiar with the injury he had. He had an injury to the outside meniscus in his knee, which is a shock absorber between the femur bone and the tibia bone. So basically, it's like a shock absorber, and somehow he got a little split in it. And what ends up happening is like having a rock inside your shoe. When you load the knee, you feel pain in that area. And so his surgeon down in Atlanta just nibbled a little piece of meniscus out of the knee. However, it takes about 4 weeks or so for that knee to normalize, to feel better, so he can play again. But he just came back this week. I think it was 4 weeks or 5 weeks maybe, and hopefully he'll be able to work himself back in. A lot of times these athletes come back in, there's two things that really slow them down. One is the knee will continue to swell. It's an irritable knee. And two, their conditioning will be lacking because they haven't actually run up and down a basketball court. So those are two things that when you see somebody come back from injury like that, they don't normally play like, a full game. They'll play, a half of what they normally would play, just so they can get their feet back underneath them. But he's going to be fine. I know his injury. He's going to be just completely fine. He'll be right back where he was. And he was having an awesome season.
He really was. He was picking up a lot of steam before the injury. And speaking of that, a lot of Wahoos in the NBA making some news, Winston. I think all these guys have had something like career highs in the past few weeks.
Yes.
Ty Jerome is really playing well. He's I think the last 6 games he's averaging close to 15 points a game and like four or 5 assists. And Diakite, wow. I mean, he was I think he was like
all-star team.
The G League all-star team, all defensive team, something else, maybe he
was all rookie team. So I guess the G League.
Yeah.
So with Diakite, I mean, he came into basketball so late, and he's got such a athletic, bouncy frame, and he's so long. He just got an NBA-looking body type, and just give him the experience. And I think the foundation he had here at UVA and at Blue Ridge School with my friend Kay Lemke, he's just been rising like a rocket. And I wouldn't be surprised if 2-3 years into the league, he might be the one we look on as a UVA guy we all look to is leading the way for our UVA players in the NBA. But everyone right now, I mean, Kyle Guy had 17 points the other night. I mean, right. It's crazy to see it. It's almost like your children all growing up. It's kind of fun.
I'll never forget something Mike Curtis, who's maybe the best in the business of what he does, and formerly worked in the NBA, told me after Momity's, it was during Momity, late in the, I guess it was in postseason of his sophomore year, and he said Momity is just a freak athlete, that he worked with a lot of guys in the NBA that had nowhere near Momity's athletic ability. So I think we're just now starting to see some of the fruits of that.
He's so bouncy. I've never seen anybody who can jump, come down, and jump again as fast as him. And he's going to reap the benefits of that in the NBA, because I don't think people will be able to keep up with him. He's such a good defender. And he's an underrated shooter. I mean, I've seen him in practice, at JPJ, knock down 6, 7, 8 3-pointers in a row. They have that Noah's Ark thing at UVA. You can just watch Momity shoot, and he's just got a very reproducible shot.
I know you work with UVA's baseball team a lot, and they're going through some struggles, somewhat unexpected. Things just haven't gelled to this point. Big series with Miami over the weekend. What's your impressions of this team? What do you think they got to do to get back on track? I guess if they could get back in it against Miami, it would be huge.
Well, before I started this call, we were up 4-0. Devin Ortiz had a triple, and Devin Ortiz has had 3 home runs in the last five games. And the guy is just one of the. So I take care of these kids, and he is just such a pleasure to take care of. He's such a good kid. We love to see him do well. But I think it's the old-fashioned baseball slump. Like we had such high aspirations coming into the season, and the hitting wasn't there, and then it starts getting in your head. And then every single time you get up to bat, you're like, I think that we can just break through this slump. We can get back on track. But man, it's been a struggle to watch us get 3 or 4 hits in a game. And, our poor pitchers are throwing well, and they're losing games 2-0 and 3-0 and things like that. So if we can turn it around, I still think this team has the ability to do something. We got to turn around fast though. And today is a must-win game, as is tomorrow against Miami, which is a good team.
Yeah, got to have run support, no question about it.
We have some major league talent on this team. I assure you, next couple of years, you're going to see some of our guys get drafted. So our pitchers alone, like Vassell, Nate Savino, Griff McGarry. I mean, just some all-star pitchers. And I hope that the team can come together.
I know in addition to your responsibilities with UVA's teams from UVA Orthopedics that you work some with JMU football, I believe. And
I do.
They're playing football now. How weird is that?
We're playing today. I would normally be at that game, but I have responsibilities here at UVA. My partner's down there at William & Mary. So we played 3 games, and we had our own COVID pause. We missed our last 2 games because of a small COVID situation. But we're back playing William & Mary today, and last I checked, we were up 28-3. Currently, the number 1 team in the country in the FCS. And so if we can win a couple more games, we'll go back to the playoffs again. It's been fun taking care of that team. You know, JMU is a lot of fan support. It's a good organization up there.
How weird is it going to be, you think, Winston, and from the, not just from the physical side of it, but just the mental challenge, I guess, for a lot of these teams that are playing spring football,
yeah,
like William & Mary, who I think is maybe Virginia's opening game in the fall. How demanding is that going to be for these teams to play a season now and then a few months later turn around and play another season?
Well, Jerry, what you need to understand is just the physical toll that a football season takes on a player and on a team. At the end of any given football season, UVA, JMU, whoever it might be, even the NFL, you'll have anywhere between 8 and 12 players who require surgery for a variety of ailments. They've just been, shoulder labrum tears and knee meniscus tears and things like that. And normally we have a 6-month turnover time to get these guys back, but we're going to have our last game this season sometime in May. And then our summer practice will start. We'll have a July workouts and then August practice and then games in September. There's not going to be any time for us to get our act together again. So, I worry about how we're going to do it, but this pandemic has made us do things we haven't done in the past. And so we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to follow as we go along. No question about it. Chris, you got any questions for Winston?
No, I'm kind of living through that too. I'm VMI Football's radio play-by-play guy for their home games, and very similar. I know the talk there as well. Of course, they're ranked for the first time in over 60 years. The last couple of weeks. When I checked, they were losing today in the second quarter down at Wofford, I think it was today.
Wofford.
The weird part of this is that quick turnaround time and the weird part of hoping guys don't get hurt so that they don't have to go through what you talked about there, Winston. The weird off season that this is, and just the mental strain of this, I think, could be an issue. The football, even there's fewer games this year for these guys. JMU will play a couple less. VMI will play 1 less, but still 7 or 8 games plus playoffs potentially. And then turning it around in a few weeks, that's going to be tough for those guys.
And the entire time, guys, they are under these COVID protocols that are very almost overbearing. I mean, these kids are living lives they're not very used to, and for them to do this for this season and possibly again next season, it's been a challenging year for our athletes. And I'm really proud of what they've been able to accomplish despite that. I mean, this COVID situation. I mean, these kids aren't leaving their dorm rooms. It's crazy.
It is crazy. I'm really happy about what VMI's done over there with our good friend Scott coaching, former Wahoo.
Scott Wackenheim, he went through a rough stretch there, 2017 and 2018. They won 1 game combined. There was talk about maybe moving on, and then he won 5 games in 2019, and then they're 4-0 this year to start the season. And we have a couple games in April where who knows, they may play themselves into a playoff position. Yeah, what he's been able to do there has just been fabulous.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that because VMI used to be, back when I started in the business, they were pretty good. I mean, we didn't have 1A and 1AA back then, so.
They were Virginia Tech's Thanksgiving Day opponent every year for a number of years. Yeah, they were on that level. They definitely were.
Absolutely. All right, Winston, thanks so much for taking part of your day away and joining us and sharing your insight. Great knowledge from you every time. We appreciate you and all the great folks at UVA Orthopedics and UVA Sports Medicine.
Absolutely, Jerry. This is always a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, brother. Get that baseball team on track, and we'll be talking about that down the road.
Very good. Have a good day, guys.